Good day. This is a question and answer. I had a conference with the buyer, the real buyer. This real buyer was dealing with broker to broker, and broker knows me, and also his business partner knows me. I don't know why this buyer been floating around, but suddenly this his broker from Nigeria, he was chatting with me on WhatsApp for a week, and he said that he has a buyer using KMR. Now this is a follow-up for Mali alone. This video is intended for the buyer wanting to buy gold in Mali. Mali is the third largest gold producer in West Africa. There's plenty of gold in Mali. Now going back to this buyer that I just finished having a conference, because I insisted his broker to connect me to the buyer because I want to interview the buyer. So the buyer revealed that he lost money. He was dealing with his broker, and he sent his broker to Nairobi, and he didn't get gold, and he paid the expenses of his broker. So that broker is making money. And then he sent his broker to Sierra Leone. Again, he didn't get the gold. So my question to this buyer that I just have finished having a conference, why are you floating around? Your partner knows Wilhelmina, and you saw Wilhelmina, and still you don't get gold. And now you ended to Wilhelmina. So I interviewed the buyer. The buyer is a real buyer. He has an account to KMR, and he wanted as well long-term supply. And he wanted to get the gold from Mali and Conakry. And he said he has an account on KMR. I said, okay, if you have an account of KMR, this is what my seller was telling me, because I made the phone calls. Because this buyer has a refinery account at KMR. That is normal. You are using the facilities, but do not send money to any refinery, putting your money. Do not, because the seller would not deal with you. The seller will start to get suspicious on you. So it's better you pay bank to bank. Now going back to this Mali. This is particularly for Mali, so that the buyer who intended to get gold in Mali, this is your information properly. As I said to you, you send a letter of intention. Attention to Wilhelmina, because Wilhelmina will validate you, will screen you, because I am the seller's marketing consultant and mandate of different seller. I am not a broker. Because if I am a broker, I will not hide things. Just like this broker from Nigeria, he's been chatting with me on WhatsApp, and he hide things. Suddenly, I just found out from the buyer's mouth that he lost money through his broker. He sent his broker to Nairobi to get gold. He didn't get the gold. And then he sent his broker to Sierra Leone. He didn't get the gold. So he lost money. This is the buyer was telling me just a few minutes ago. So when I interviewed the buyer, immediately I said to the buyer, your partner knows me, right? I'm not going to mention his business partner, okay? And also this broker from Nigeria, because I don't want the buyer and the business partner to be embarrassed. Because you know, Wilhelmina is very brutal. So do not knock around. You are cheating yourself. Thinking you can get gold very cheap. You don't get gold very cheap, because gold is the world asset. Gold is an investment. Gold has a face value. The seller would not sell his gold very cheap. A real seller would not sell his gold very cheap, because there is a face value on it. There is value added tax and export tax. You are not paying taxes anymore. The tax is already on the price, right? I'm the one who advised the seller, do not ask the buyer to pay taxes. You put the tax on the price. Take it or leave it. If the buyer can afford to pay, he get the gold. If you cannot afford to pay, therefore you don't have the money. If the buyer asking for CIF cost, insurance, and freight, who is paying for that? So therefore the buyer has to pay, because to acid the gold, it costs money as well. So when I was talking to this buyer, he felt comfortable with Wilhelmina, because I explained to him very thoroughly. And I said to this buyer, I'm not going to mention his name, but I will upload this on YouTube so that you as potential buyer would understand. If you want to buy gold in Mali, follow the seller's terms and conditions, because he controls the supply. Yes, you have the money, but your paper money has no value, because gold is solid cash as well. So therefore, You send Wilhelmina a letter of intent because I am going to validate you first. Because I am the seller's marketing consultant and mandate and fully authorized. I am not a broker. Because broker will float around, he would not advise you. Okay? Just like this buyer that I had the conference, he lost money. He was being advised wrongly. So that is the reason why I asked this broker from Nigeria, I want to talk to your buyer. For 1 week, I said, well, if you cannot bring your buyer on conference on Skype with me, I want to see the buyer live, then he is not a buyer to me. So the broker has no means, he has to bring the buyer. So he connected me on Skype. And I asked the buyer, kindly open your camera. I want to see you. So he said to me, well, Amina, everybody knows you. I said, of course, everybody knows me because I'm marketed around the globe. I explain it to you guys live on YouTube and Facebook. So everybody knows me, but you. Still, you're not comprehending. So now this buyer from United States, he start to understand. And he's asking a discount. And I told him, put that on writing. Because our selling price is based on the world market. I advise the buyer, send the letter of intent on your company letterhead. Attention to Wilhelmina. Dear Wilhelmina, thank you for our live video conference. I have a refinery account at KMR. This is the goal that I need. I want 20 kilos, 50 kilos, 100 kilos. I have an account at the refinery, KMR. This is what I have explained to this buyer, but I'm not going to mention his name. So I told the buyer, the seller will sell the gold to you, but in condition. The gold has to be assayed at DNGM, which is the government refinery. Now, after you listen to my conversation, I will give you the link of government refinery and also KMR. Then you can compare. I know KMR is the biggest refinery in West Africa. The refinery is 100 meters away from International Airport. Their headquarters is in Italy. They are there in Bamako. The government give them tax incentives because they create employment. Right. This KMR, they are also hiring and local employment. That is part of business. So the seller also has his own worker. So the seller is hiring as well local miner. But he would not sell his gold very cheap because there is a face value on the gold. Right. Now, you understand now why the seller doesn't sell his gold very cheap. Does anybody explain to you? None whatsoever. Even the broker from Nigeria. He's been chatting with me for a week. He's been talking and talking and talking, and I told him, don't bullshitting with Wilhelmina. Because if you are working with a buyer, you service your buyer. I service both buyers and seller. I am the one who will say yes or no. Because I'm going to recommend the buyer to the seller that this buyer is real. I requested the buyer today, just a few seconds ago. He sent me a letter of intent. I want you to send me your business license. I want to send you your importation license. You send it to Wilhelmina and your passport. Your information will be kept privately and it would not float around from broker to broker. It wouldn't, because I'm going to protect the buyers and the sellers' information. I have all the sellers' information, but I would not release to any third party until I meet the real buyer, until the buyer will send a letter of intent on his company letterhead. The most important, you have to prove to us that you have proof of fund, your bank statement, that you have $1 million in your bank account. We are not asking any upfront here. We're not, because gold is money. But if you need Wilhelmina extra service, yes, Wilhelmina will charge his trip, just like this buyer. He sent his broker to Nairobi. The buyer paid for the buyer's broker's trip, failed. Then the buyer sent the broker to Sierra Leone, failed. Why? The seller wouldn't trust the broker. Why? Before you're gonna send the broker, you need to have a contract first. Now, I'm the one who introduced this after my trip. Okay, I'm always using Ghana because I've been to Ghana. I did make a sale of gold, yes. So this is what you do, guys, being a buyer. I know you lose money. Today, 2018, I encourage the buyer to take Wilhelmina with the buyer. First of all, as I've said, send me a letter of intent attention to Wilhelmina. Dear Wilhelmina, thank you for our conversation live video conference few minutes ago. But I'm not going to mention the name of the buyer because I respect the buyer. He's a very big buyer as well. This is my intention to purchase gold in Mali. I have a KMR refinery. Do you think your buyer, your seller, will allow his gold to ASI to KMR? Now, I did make the phone calls last night. Today is 11 o'clock in the morning in Brisbane, Australia. So I got the response very urgently. The seller says, we will sell the gold to anybody, but the gold has to be ASI first to the government refinery called DNGM. I will give you the link after you listen to this conversation to this lady in front of you, and I will also give the link of KMR. Then you can compare which one you like. But the seller would not bring the gold to KMR, as I've said. ASI first to government refinery to find out the purity and the carats. There is a cost on ASI, $50 per kilo. So when you get the ASI report, right, then that is the time you release your payment. Then you can bring it to KMR to re-ASI because maybe you might convert that into 99.99. That is your business. Our business is to sell it to you. We will provide you something that extra gram because KMR, the gold will shrink according to KMR because I made a phone calls to KMR last year, right? The gold will shrink, right? There is a chemical component like magnesium and lead and silver and zinc that you as the buyer have no idea as either. But Wilhelmina have an idea because I know both buyers and sellers are also a victim because the seller is naive. The seller said, oh, my gold is yellow, but the seller doesn't know what is inside the rock. Now, as being a marketing consultant, I know the product knowledge. I have to service both buyers and seller. So you got now my point now? So now, this is for Mali, eh? So guys, you can get gold in Mali, whatever you need, as long as you pay cash. CIF is stand for cost and insurance and freight only. Who is going to pay for that? My seller would not deal on the first trial shipment CIF. You pay cash. Start 10 or 20. You pay cash. Then the second shipment, then we will consider you come back because we need a long term. The first trial is a very, very crucial between both buyers and seller because we don't know how much the gold will shrink. You are using KMR, that is fantastic because KMR, their refinery is huge and their machinery is very sophisticated. They can pick up any chemical element. The gold will shrink, yes. The seller in Mali will provide extra gram. After the ASA report of DNGM government refinery, because I told my seller that you need to provide 1.2 or 1.3 in one bar, so that when the buyer bring the gold to KMR, the one bar exactly 1,000 kilograms, because the gold will shrink. I sold the gold to a buyer from Australia, from Sydney, and this is from Ghana gold, and he sell it to Aurora, send it to Aurora. The gold assay on 1,000 kilogram is 99.0. So the gold the gram is 996.5. So when I look at the assay report, I have on my Facebook, the gold shrink. So I go back to the buyer, to all sellers and buyer. Yes, gold will shrink. That is the reason why most of the buyer had a problem. Many years ago, I think 2011, I encountered as well a problem. The gold shrink in Ghana. Some of gold in Ghana is good for industrial. It's a huge silver and brass. So when the buyer took to Canada, his name, the buyer was Salwan Kanwar, and he doesn't have the money, and he was not aware as well, and he blamed me. I did not receive any single cents. He went to Ghana with his broker. So I learned from so many problems. So today, when the buyer from Australia, he wanted to come to Ghana, and I said to him, use Aurora. I recommend Aurora because I know Carry. So Carry asked the gold. The gold of one of the gold of my seller was perfect, 99.990. Mhm. So that is the I'm sharing you, but forget about Ghana. Don't come to Ghana. Come to Mali because the buyer has a refinery account. Mhm. So I hope I explained the explanation. I given you the answer and question. Mhm. Your question has been answered by Wilhelmina during the conference with the real buyer. But I would not mention the name of the real buyer because it's under negotiation. So the broker are trying to evade. The broker scared to reveal his buyer because of circumvent. If you are working with a buyer, you don't need to worry about circumvention because the buyer is paying you. Can you imagine the buyer sent this broker from Nigeria to Nairobi? The buyer didn't get the gold and he lost money. So now, you cannot hide things. We are now in a modern technology. What is the purpose of global communication? To connect people, to connect the right buyers and seller. Wilhelmina is here to service you, both buyers and seller. I hope you understand my explanation. Your question has been answered through video because I just finished talking to the real buyer that he was being frustrated. Thank you very much and have a pleasant good morning. Today is February 22.